This week, the internet has exploded with the news that Blackmagic could be joining the L-mount alliance and releasing a full-frame camera in 2023. But the real question is this good news or bad news? Let's find out. Finally, we have news out of Blackmagic Design. I thought I would do this short video just to basically get a conversation started, because I want to know what you guys think. I'm going to let you guys know what I think, whether it's good or bad. But let me start why this is 100% possible and why it's very likely this could be true. So, as someone who's right in the middle of Blackmagic and L-mount, I've been shooting Blackmagic cameras for around 4 or 5 years. I've owned maybe 5, 6 at this point, and currently own the Pocket 6K Pro and the Ursa Mini sat here. I also have recently just bought the Panasonic S5 Mark II, what we're shooting on right now, and I've purchased a couple of L-mount lenses. And I know from my comment section of previous videos on this channel that I'm not the only Blackmagic shooter who has been interested in what Lumix are doing and has felt that I've been missing that kind of run and gun, autofocus, IBIS camera, looking at Sony thinking it's too far apart, and then seeing Lumix come along, introducing B-roll, and thinking, maybe this is the stopgap I need. We all know that one of the best things Blackmagic has ever done, and also one of the best things to come to the filmmaking industry in a long time, is B-roll. B-roll was a game changer. It was almost like the way I saw photographers shooting RAW without questioning it. And now that's available in the video world, we can just shoot B-roll. You don't really think about it. I know it's compressed RAW codec like ProRes RAW, etc. But there's just something about the B-roll codec that uses your GPU and almost makes your computer feel 5 times more powerful than it is. So you've got a really cheap computer, you're shooting high resolution RAW, and it's all just working when really it shouldn't be so. And that is exactly what we need as filmmakers. We need codecs that just enable us to get more detail, more post-production, without the cost of hard drives and super powerful computers. And I could be wrong here, but to my knowledge, the Lumix camera is the first non-Blackmagic hardware that is able to communicate and record in B-roll. I know people question the first implementations of how B-roll was used on the earlier Lumix cameras, but with the S5 Mark II, I see nothing but good things. I think the way it's been implemented looks great. It looks like exactly the way that the Ursa and the Pocket shoot B-roll, and you get all the same settings in Resolve, and it looks fantastic. I guess the point I'm trying to get to here is there's an open line of communication between Blackmagic and Lumix, and it seems like they're on good terms. Now, Lumix and Panasonic are one of the founding members of the L-mount alliance. So this is why I believe that this could 100% be true and probably is going to happen. Let me break down some pros and some cons of why I think this could be good but also bad. But before I jump into that, I think it's important to understand what the L-mount alliance actually is. Back in 2018, Sigma, Panasonic and Leica all teamed up to make something called the L-mount alliance. The idea behind this was that they would take the already existing L-mount from Leica and use this as a standard across Panasonic and Sigma. Now, Sigma had only made lenses and they were just about to release their first ever camera, what was the Sigma FP. It's like a little mini camera, I'm sure you've seen it. And I think the first ever Panasonic Lumix camera to have the L-mount was the full frame S1. This also meant that Sigma and Panasonic could also start making lenses for the L-mount. So not only did we have the Leica lenses that already existed and would carry on to get released, we now have Sigma, the world famous lens manufacturers, making L-mount lenses, and Panasonic, who have also been making lenses for years, releasing more L-mount lenses that would help bring a greater value and variety of lenses to the L-mount brand. I'm guessing the idea behind this was to compete with the likes of Sony and their E-mount mirrorless lenses. They'd got off to such a good start, and an early one, what's kind of placed them in first place for their lenses and their variety and choice. Canon with the RF was late, so was L-mount, that come along a bit later, and I'd say that E-mount is still the biggest variety today, followed by L-mount and RF mount from Canon in second place. Skipping forward 4 years, things was going pretty well for the L-mount alliance as Panasonic and Sigma was releasing more and more lenses. But come along DJI, who wanted to be the first partner to join the L-mount alliance, So now it's not only Leica, Sigma and Panasonic, it's also DJI, who then went on to release the Ronin 4D, what had an L-mount option on it. I have only used maybe 4 or 5 different L-mount lenses, but I have purchased 2, what is the Sigma 2470 and the Panasonic Lumix 18 to 35 f4. I just love the weight that Panasonic put in it. It balances perfect in the S5 Mark II and S5 I. It's just a really cool little combination of balance, the way it feels in your hand. I'm really a big fan of the lens. The build quality is great. I have no trouble recommending either lens. They're both fantastic lenses. But let's get back to the point why we are here. Will Blackmagic follow DJI in joining the L-mount alliance? I personally think this is true. I personally think this is going to happen. I think Blackmagic are going to release a full frame camera, and I also think Blackmagic need a mount. I think joining RF was always an option, but with DJI joining L-mount, then Blackmagic, I think this would give it some really good traction. I just think Blackmagic joining, following DJI, 2 massive companies in the camera world, just give L-mount some really good traction. You've then got Blackmagic, Leica, Panasonic, DJI and Sigma. These are all massive players in photo, video, drone, and on and on and on. The L-mount alliance would be looking as strong as ever and would be a real force to be reckoned with at that point. So it almost is a win-win for Blackmagic and all the other brands if Blackmagic was to join. Now we understand what the L-mount alliance is, let's get into some pros and cons of what's good and bad. Let's get started on some pros. Blackmagic have been using EF mount and PL mount pretty much solely for their cinema cameras. I know they have the broadcast stuff, but I personally, I own a set of cine lenses that are both EF and PL mount, and I also own a lot of Canon glass that is just outright EF mount, and also some Sigma stuff. Up until this point, it was kind of the thinking that Blackmagic would jump straight across to the RF mount, being the newer, updated, mirrorless version of the EF mount. This would be like following in the steps of Red, as Red used to use EF and PL mounts on their cameras, and recently with their Komodos and stuff, they moved onto an RF mount. So getting into my first pro, I think it is a good thing if Blackmagic use L mount for us as customers, as if every single cinema camera manufacturer, Arri, Red, Blackmagic, all moved onto RF mount, that would mean less competition for RF Cineglass, RF autofocus lenses. Now, I know Sony have the whole E-mount, and E-mount definitely has the best range of lenses for any mirrorless mount right now. But if Blackmagic did proceed down the L-mount route, this would only provide competition for RF mount and E-mount, making the value we get as customers better, as they compete with each other to bring out cheaper and better value lenses to steal the customers from each other. We just win as a customer. Another pro is that everyone wants an autofocus Blackmagic camera, and if they're ever going to do that, I feel they had to move to a mirrorless mount. And we've all seen the new autofocus systems from Lumix using the L-mount lenses, like I'm filming right now. Now, I know most of the autofocus is done by the camera and the phase detect autofocus and the sensor and whatnot, but to make all that work, the lenses do matter. Now, the L-mount lenses, like the one you're watching right now, works absolutely great for autofocus. It's doing perfect eye tracking, and that's good to know that these lenses work good for that if or when Blackmagic actually do implement that in their cameras. Another pro is if this relationship between Lumix and Blackmagic keeps proceeding forward, is there a world where Blackmagic can borrow the Lumix phase detect autofocus? Now, this is kind of getting into dreamland, and this is the stuff dreams are made of, but can you imagine a Blackmagic camera with the kind of film texture, Blackmagic look people have grown to love, but with the technology from the Lumix bodies, the IBIS, the autofocus? Now, this probably won't happen, but even if it was just a phase detect autofocus, that'd be a massive step in the right direction and a big win for us people buying these cameras. Another pro for someone like me is just the ability to share lenses. Now, I've just purchased 2 new L-mount lenses, the Sigma 24-70 and the 18-35 we're on right now, and I would love to be able to put them on my Pocket and Ursa Mini Pro and whatever other cameras Blackmagic bring out, being full frame. I would just love the ability to be like shooting Lumix cameras, and then when the clients call and they need that big production, the teamwork, that I'm on the Ursa, I can share glass, I can have L-mount cine lenses, L-mount autofocus lenses. That would just be an ideal scenario for the way my kit works right now. I understand this might not be a pro for everyone. There might be people out there who already own Canons and RF, and I'm sure that they want it to be an RF mount if they own Blackmagic cameras. Another pro, I think, would be what we've seen with like the C7 and the FX3 or FX6 size. I think Blackmagic cameras right now are some of the largest, heaviest cameras out there. I think introducing an L mount just brings the lenses smaller. It reduces the flange distance, and it just helps us get lighter cameras with more ability. So I think that's just a win-win. There's no real negative there, and it just puts us right in line with other manufacturers. Let's talk about the cons I could think of. I think obviously the first one is just a con with the L mount in general. There is just not the range that exists in the E mount lineup. I would say that the biggest lack is for the cheaper budget lenses. While I think the Sigma and Panasonic have really filled out the more expensive lenses, and Leica obviously do some amazing, really expensive glass, you've also got some really good anamorphic choices coming into play and some cine lenses dropping. So what is really lacking for me is the cheaper kind of budget people starting out, or people who just can't afford the more expensive stuff. I think that really needs work, and I think Panasonic and Sigma should be the guys that provide them lenses. What I would add to that is if Blackmagic was to officially announce they were joining the L mount alliance, just like cage manufacturers and accessory manufacturers, I think Blackmagic sell a big enough volume of pocket cameras to really make a difference. I think that lens manufacturers will start flooding. If they can make one lens that fits on a Panasonic, Leica, DJI drone, or Ronin 4D, and Blackmagic's latest full frame pocket or Ursa, that would be a pretty much no-brainer to most lens manufacturers. Another negative for someone like me is I own a lot of EF lenses and Cineglass, what's EF, and old kind of 70-200s, what are EF, and Sigma lenses. I have pretty much 80% of my lenses are at this point EF. But I think we all knew this was coming. We all knew at some point we're going to have to get rid of that old glass and move to E mount or L mount or RF mount. And another quick fix for this is Sigma do the EF to L mount MC21. And from what I've seen online, the autofocus works great for this on Panasonic lenses. So I think that'll be a quick fix for a lot of people. Just don't think it's quite sturdy for those cine lenses. Another negative would be, I guess a lot of people might have guessed that Blackmagic was going to move to RF mount after using E mount. So maybe they've already started investing in RF or Canon cameras, hoping they can play well with the Blackmagic cameras. I'm not sure, but this would definitely be a negative if you're someone who'd already started investing in a lot of RF lenses, as they're really expensive. Another one, and this kind of applies to all mirrorless mounts at this point, is just strength. If we're going to get L mount lenses, and if Blackmagic are going to call it a cinema camera, what's going to take big, heavy cinema lenses, I think it needs to be more than just the L mount. I'd like to see them copy Red here, what they did with the RF mount and had a locking mechanism. If they could do that, it could bring some sort of L mount with a locking mechanism, like a twist, like the PL mounts do. And this would be totally fine and quick solved. But yeah, I don't think I'd be fully comfortable if Blackmagic just released a new cinema camera with just a basic EL mount. The only question left now is, what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. I want to start conversations here. I want to find out whether this is a good idea, bad idea, what did I miss? Sure, there's loads more stuff we can find out about this. Do you think this is a really good idea for Blackmagic and it's exactly what their already amazing cameras need? Or do you think this is a terrible idea and kind of losing their cinema camera direction that they have been pushing in for the last couple of years? As I said in the start of this video, I'm so excited to find out what everyone thinks. But in the meanwhile, if you want to find out what's better between a Blackmagic and a Lumix camera, click here.